Energy bills are rising across the United States, and millions of households are feeling the pinch. The Trump administration has been quick to blame wind turbines and solar farms, claiming that renewable energy projects are the real culprit behind higher costs. But energy experts, economists, and independent analysts tell a very different story. The reality is that the surge in energy prices is the result of a complex mix of global market dynamics, domestic demand growth, trade policies, regulatory rollbacks, and aging infrastructure. In short, while the political narrative focuses on renewables, the true drivers of rising energy costs lie elsewhere, and they paint a much more complicated picture. One of the most immediate causes is the rapid increase in demand for electricity. The American power grid is being asked to do more than ever before. From the explosive growth of data centers that fuel artificial intelligence and cloud computing to the expansion of electric vehicles that need charging infrastructure, and the more extreme weather patterns that force households to use more heating and cooling, electricity consumption is climbing at a pace not seen in decades. When demand surges faster than supply can expand, the laws of economics dictate that prices will rise. Without significant new generation capacity coming online quickly, utilities are forced to charge consumers more for the electricity that is available. A second and equally important factor is America's dependence on natural gas. Natural gas accounts for more than 40% of U.S. electricity generation, making it a critical driver of energy prices. In recent years, the U.S. has dramatically expanded exports of liquefied natural gas (LNG) to foreign markets. While this has been profitable for energy companies, it has tied domestic prices much more closely to volatile global markets. That means a surge in demand in Europe or Asia, or disruptions to supply abroad, now ripple through to American households in the form of higher bills. Instead of benefiting from an abundant domestic supply of natural gas, U.S. consumers are effectively competing with global buyers, and that competition drives prices upward at home. At the same time, the Trump administration's own policy decisions have played a decisive role in shaping today's energy cost landscape. By rolling back subsidies and tax incentives for renewable energy projects, the administration slowed down the deployment of wind and solar power. These technologies have consistently been among the cheapest sources of new electricity generation, with costs falling dramatically over the last decade. But without strong incentives, fewer projects are breaking ground, which means less low-cost electricity is being added to the grid. The effect is a greater reliance on fossil fuels, which not only have higher long-term operating costs but are also far more exposed to global price swings. In other words, policy rollbacks reduced the supply of affordable, stable energy, locking the U.S. further into a costlier and more volatile path. Trade policies have also added fuel to the fire. Tariffs imposed on imported solar panels, wind turbines, and critical raw materials have increased the cost of building new energy infrastructure across the country. These added expenses do not simply fall on manufacturers or developers. They are ultimately passed down to consumers in the form of higher utility rates. In addition, trade disruptions slow down project timelines, further constraining the speed at which cheaper, cleaner energy can be brought online. The result is a cycle where infrastructure costs rise, projects are delayed, and consumers foot the bill. Layered on top of these policy choices is the challenge of America's aging grid. Much of the nation's electrical infrastructure is decades old, and maintaining it grows more expensive each year. Modernizing the grid to handle new types of power generation and to distribute electricity more efficiently would require significant investment, but progress has been slow. Without these upgrades, bottlenecks persist, limiting the ability of cheaper sources of electricity like renewables to reach consumers. Utilities then face higher operational costs, and those costs, too, are reflected in monthly bills. External pressures have only made matters worse. Inflation has pushed up the price of labor, raw materials, and construction, all of which are necessary for building and maintaining energy infrastructure. Meanwhile, climate change has introduced new stresses on the system. Heat waves drive up air conditioning demand, droughts reduce hydroelectric output, and severe storms damage power lines and substations. These conditions not only increase the amount of energy people need but also raise the cost of generating and delivering it reliably. Taken together, these factors reveal the real reasons behind rising energy costs under Trump's administration. Higher demand, increased reliance on natural gas tied to global markets, the rollback of renewable energy incentives, tariffs, and trade disruptions, aging infrastructure, inflation, and extreme weather are all combining to push prices upward. The narrative that renewables are to blame simply does not align with the evidence. In fact, renewables are often the cheapest new sources of electricity and, if supported, could help insulate consumers from the very volatility now driving prices higher. By weakening policies that supported clean energy, the administration has inadvertently exacerbated the cost pressures it claims to be fighting. The big picture is clear. America's rising energy costs are less about wind and solar, and far more about policy choices, global market exposure, and infrastructure that has not kept pace with modern demand. Until the U.S. makes serious investments in cleaner energy sources and in updating the grid, households are likely to face continued upward pressure on their bills. The political debate may cast blame in simple terms, but the truth is far more complex, and the solutions require looking beyond rhetoric to address the underlying economic and structural challenges of America's energy system.